He was on his way to becoming one of Hollywood's brightest stars, with acclaim for his dramatic performances and a promising future as a Marvel villain. But now actor Jonathan Majors is facing the possibility of up to a year in jail after a conviction on misdemeanor reckless assault and harassment.
He was just a boy with a dream, growing up in a quiet town in Texas, where not many people imagined they'd ever end up in Hollywood. Jonathan Majors wasn't born into fame or money. In fact, he spent part of his childhood moving between different places, even living on a military base for a while. His father was in the Air Force, but one day he disappeared. Just like that. One day he was there, the next he was gone. No goodbye, no note. Jonathan was only a kid, but that moment changed him. Taught him early that people can leave without warning and life doesn't always play fair. He was raised by his mother, a pastor who did everything she could to give him and his siblings a better life. But it wasn't easy. He got into fights, he was arrested, he lived in his car for a while, teachers didn't always understand him. He felt out of place, angry and broken, but somehow, through all the pain, he found something that gave him peace: acting. It was in drama class that he realized he could turn all his pain into something powerful. He didn't just want to act, he needed to. It was like breathing, like surviving. He ended up at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, where he trained hard and proved himself. Then he made it all the way to Yale School of Drama, one of the top acting schools in the world. People then noticed something about him. He had that rare fire in his eyes. He wasn't just performing scenes, he was living them. Every role he played felt like it came from deep inside his soul. There was something raw about him, something real. When he graduated, it didn't take long for the world to notice. His breakout moment came in a small indie film called The Last Black Man in San Francisco. He wasn't the star of the movie, but when people walked out of the theater, they couldn't stop talking about him. Who was this guy with a deep voice, intense eyes, and a way of saying so much without speaking much at all? Hollywood started calling, big directors, casting agents. Suddenly he was everywhere. But even then, even when the cameras were on him, he carried a quiet sadness. People around him said he was deep, serious, always thinking, always locked in. But nobody really knew what was going on inside. And maybe that's what made him such a good actor, because he had learned to hide so much. On screen, he could become anyone: a soldier, a gangster, a god. Off screen, he remained a mystery. Then came the big leap: Marvel. He was cast as Kang the Conqueror, a major villain set to appear across the next phase of the Marvel universe. It was the kind of role that changes lives. It meant global fame, millions of dollars, magazine covers, interviews. But with every new spotlight came more pressure, more attention, more people watching his every move. And while fans cheered him on, others began whispering. Some said he was difficult to work with, intense, cold, a perfectionist who didn't tolerate mistakes. But no one had any proof. So the rumors just stayed rumors. For now, at this point, Jonathan Majors had become a symbol of power, of talent, of rising from nothing. Young actors looked up to him, fans praised him for being real. Directors wanted him in their films, but the truth was, very few people really knew him. The boy who once lived in his car had made it to the top of the world. But what no one knew, what no one could know yet, was that the same pain that helped him climb might also be what would drag him back down. And this was only the beginning. At first, it felt like Jonathan Majors was unstoppable. After years of struggling, fighting his way out of dark places, and carrying the weight of a broken past, he had finally arrived. The world had noticed him. Big studios saw something rare in him, something different. He had a quiet fire, a deep voice, and eyes that told a story even when he said nothing. After his powerful performance in The Last Black Man in San Francisco, everyone wanted to work with him. It didn't take long before Jonathan Majors became a name that mattered. He wasn't just another actor. He was being called the future of Hollywood. Soon, he was everywhere. Film festivals, red carpets, magazine covers. People started to believe he could carry entire movies on his back. He was praised for being intense, committed, and fearless in his acting. But behind all the praise, there was a strange silence about who he really was. He wasn't known for joking around in interviews. He didn't talk much about his personal life, and while that mystery made him more interesting to the public, it also kept people guessing about what was hiding beneath the surface. He took on powerful roles. Serious, emotional, sometimes violent. It was like he was drawn to characters who were haunted by something. And maybe that wasn't just acting. Maybe those roles came so naturally because he knew that feeling too well. But as the cameras focused more on him, so did the pressure. He had to keep delivering. He had to stay perfect. And Hollywood has a strange way of smiling at you while waiting for you to slip. Still, Jonathan kept climbing. He starred in Da 5 Bloods with Spike Lee, and then the HBO hit Lovecraft Country, a show that mixed horror, history, and deep pain from America's past. People were amazed by his performance. He wasn't just acting anymore. He was commanding the screen. The show got Emmy buzz, and Jonathan's name kept growing louder. Then came the moment that changed everything. Marvel Studios chose him to play Kang the Conqueror. This wasn't just a movie role, this was an empire. Marvel had built a universe over a decade, and now Jonathan was picked to lead the next big chapter of that universe. It was a powerful role, one that could turn any actor into a legend. The fans were excited, the industry called it a bold choice. It looked like Jonathan Majors was about to become a global icon. But sometimes when you fly too close to the sun, people begin to watch you more closely, not with love, but with curiosity, even jealousy. Some reports quietly began to surface. People who had worked with him started saying things, not on camera, not publicly, but in whispers. They said he was difficult, controlling, cold. Some said he lost his temper too fast. Others said he was obsessed with perfection, that he expected everyone to work as hard as him, and when they didn't, things got tense. Still, none of it was proven, nothing was on the record, and because of that, the spotlight stayed bright, the offers kept coming, and the world kept cheering. But behind the scenes, a quiet storm was starting to grow. He had fame, power, and fans who believed in him. But at the same time, he had something else. Eyes watching his every move, ears listening closely, and people waiting to see what might happen next. Fame can be like a mirror. It shows you what people want to see, but it also reflects the things you try to hide. And in Jonathan's case, it seemed like some people were starting to look a little too closely. The pressure of being perfect, of leading billion-dollar franchises, of always having to look calm and collected in public, this pressure was building slowly, but no one could see it yet. To the outside world, everything still looked perfect. The roles were getting bigger, the praise was getting louder. He was being called the next Denzel, the next legend, but inside, maybe something wasn't right. Maybe the boy who once lived in a car still felt like he didn't belong. Maybe all the success in the world couldn't silence the old pain. Or maybe he was just very good at hiding what was really going on. The fans didn't know. The public didn't know. But some people close to him were starting to wonder, was this just a man working hard to stay on top? Or was there something else happening behind the curtain? A part of the story that hadn't come out yet. People started to pay more attention to the way he acted off screen. Was he too quiet, too intense, too serious? Was that part of the charm or part of the warning signs? These weren't loud questions, not yet, but they were there, floating in the air like smoke. Something was coming, but no one could say what. And that's the strange thing about fame. It can make you feel untouchable even while the ground beneath you is starting to crack. Jonathan Majors had everything people dream about, but some dreams turn into nightmares, and the world was about to find out that his story wasn't just about rising up. It was also about what happens when the spotlight turns cold. It all came crashing down faster than anyone could have imagined, and when it did, it didn't just shock his fans. It shook the entire industry. Jonathan Majors, once seen as Hollywood's next great talent, suddenly found himself at the center of a scandal no one saw coming. The man who had just been praised for his strength, his emotion, and his rise from pain to power was now being accused of something dark and serious. News broke that he had been arrested after a disturbing incident involving a woman who was reportedly in a close relationship with him. The charges were not light, they were shocking. The public didn't know what to believe. Some were in denial, saying this must be a mistake, that Jonathan was too focused, too professional, too admired to ever be part of something like this. Others were angry, saying that maybe the signs had always been there and no one had wanted to look. And just like that, the image of the rising star was replaced by mugshots, courtroom sketches, and breaking headlines. He was supposed to be Marvel's next big villain, but suddenly, real-life headlines painted him as something even worse. As the news spread, brands started pulling away, studios paused deals, Marvel went silent. The same machine that once lifted him so high suddenly stopped moving. Hollywood doesn't wait, it doesn't hesitate. It doesn't ask questions before stepping back. And that's exactly what happened. People who once praised him now avoided his name. Friends stopped posting about him. Co-stars looked uncomfortable in interviews. And the silence was loud. But behind the silence, people started talking off the record in hushed tones. They said this incident might not have been the first time Jonathan lost control. They said the industry had heard things, small things, whispers, warnings, but no one wanted to speak up because he was the golden boy. He was too important, too valuable. And now that protection was gone, suddenly more people started coming forward. Some were anonymous, some hinted at past experiences. There were rumors of emotional abuse, controlling behavior, anger that came out in private moments but was never seen in public. It was like a dam had broken. The stories, the gossip, the doubts that had stayed hidden for so long were now spilling into the open. And the question wasn't just about guilt or innocence anymore. It became a bigger, more uncomfortable question. How much did Hollywood already know? And why did no one say anything before? For many, this wasn't just a scandal, it was a betrayal. People had looked up to Jonathan Majors. He was proof that pain could be turned into power, that someone with nothing could become everything. And now the story was in pieces. In court, he denied everything. His lawyer said he was innocent. They said the truth would come out, but by then the damage had already started. Some fans stayed loyal, others walked away. Social media became a war zone of opinions. One day, he was a villain, the next, a victim. But no one could say for sure, because the truth was still hiding behind lawyers, behind closed doors, behind the fear of what else might come out if people kept asking questions. And so the mystery grew deeper. What really happened that night? What led to the arrest? Was it a one-time mistake or the result of something that had been building for years? And perhaps the darkest question of all, had everyone missed the signs, or had they ignored them on purpose? The press kept digging. Every new detail added more confusion. Security footage, text messages, statements, all of it raised more questions than answers. And through it all, Jonathan Majors stayed mostly silent, watching as the world that once cheered for him now looked at him with doubt. It was a fall that felt too fast, too sharp, too sudden. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't sudden at all. Maybe it had been building quietly for a long time. Maybe the fame was just a mask. And now the mask had cracked. As people tried to make sense of Jonathan Majors' shocking fall, more questions began to rise. Questions that had no clear answers, only shadows and hints of something darker. What the public had seen was the arrest, the headlines, and the court dates. But behind all of that, there was something more, something that didn't make it to the news right away. It was a pattern, quiet and hidden, buried under his fame and charm, protected by the spotlight that had once made him untouchable. People close to him had started speaking, not loudly, but carefully, as if they were afraid of what might happen if they told the full truth. There were whispers about how Jonathan would control those around him, how he would become cold and distant one moment, then full of rage the next. Some said he was hard to please, that working with him felt like walking on glass. Others said he had a way of making people feel small, even while pretending to lift them up. These things were never talked about when he was rising, not because they weren't real, but because no one wanted to believe them. He was too talented, too important, too promising. But now, with his name surrounded by scandal, people finally started to connect the dots. Old interviews were rewatched, past relationships were examined, Some of his past partners said they had felt unsafe but didn't speak out before because they thought no one would believe them. Some former classmates remembered him as intense and secretive, someone who took acting so seriously it sometimes felt scary. Others talked about how he had always seemed to carry a storm inside him, one that he kept hidden until it was too late to stop. There were even quiet stories from people on film sets who said the energy changed whenever he walked in. It was heavy, like something unspoken filled the air, like people were waiting for him to snap. But still, none of this had come out before the arrest. It had all stayed in the dark, hidden by the bright light of his fame. And that's the mystery that makes this story even more painful. Was Hollywood protecting him because of his talent? Did people choose to stay silent because speaking up might cost them their job or ruin their own future? And if that's true, how many others have been protected in the same way, while their victims stayed silent in fear? These questions don't have easy answers. They open up a world that is hard to look at. A world where power and silence go hand in hand. A world where people get hurt behind the scenes, while the cameras only show success and smiles. With Jonathan Majors, the signs might have been there all along. The serious face, the sharp tone, the way he carried himself, not like a man trying to impress, but like one who believed he didn't need to answer to anyone. Some called it confidence, others are now calling it something else. And this is where the real story begins to twist. Because when someone falls from fame, people want to know everything. They dig deeper. They don't just look at the crime, they look at the person. Every old moment becomes part of the puzzle. Every old friend is asked for a comment. And the more people dig into Jonathan's past, the more strange and uncomfortable truths begin to surface. Not all of them are confirmed, not all of them are proven, but together they paint a picture that is hard to ignore. A picture of a man who may have been hiding behind his roles, who may have been using his pain not only to act, but also to control, to harm, to cover something darker. It's not easy to say what is real and what is rumor, but what's clear now is that the image people once believed in, that of the strong, silent, talented man who overcame struggle, is now broken. The mystery isn't just about what he did, it's about who he really was this whole time, and that's what keeps people watching. That's what makes this scandal so hard to look away from. Because we don't just want answers about one night. We want to understand how someone who seemed so powerful, so inspiring, could have carried so much darkness for so long without being stopped. The truth might never be fully known. Some people may never speak. Some stories may stay hidden. But what has already come out is enough to leave a stain on everything he built. And now, as the world tries to decide who Jonathan Majors really is, one thing is certain: this was never just about a single mistake. It was about the silence, the secrets, and the signs that were missed or was ignored. After everything fell apart, the world looked at Jonathan Majors in a different way. He was no longer the rising star with a powerful future ahead. He was no longer the actor everyone wanted to work with. Now, he was the man at the center of a storm, facing serious accusations, losing roles, and watching everything he had built begin to disappear. One by one, the doors started to close. The movie roles were taken away, brand deals vanished, interviews were cancelled. Marvel, the studio that once promised him a future as one of their biggest characters, said nothing for a while, and that silence said everything. People noticed how fast things changed, how quickly someone could go from being loved to being avoided. But what made it worse was the feeling that this wasn't just about one mistake. This wasn't just about one night, it was about the feeling that maybe people had been lied to for years, that maybe the version of Jonathan Majors the world had been shown wasn't real. Fans didn't know what to believe anymore. Some still supported him, saying he was innocent until proven guilty. Others felt heartbroken and angry, saying the warning signs had always been there, but no one listened. And through it all, Jonathan stayed mostly quiet, appearing in court, walking past cameras with a serious face, saying little, while the public tried to make sense of who he really was. The case dragged on. Updates came slowly. Each new headline brought more questions. Sometimes it seemed like the truth would come out soon, but then more confusion followed. And in the middle of all of it was Jonathan, still trying to hold on to something, still trying to keep control of what was left of his image. But the truth was, no matter what the court decided, something had already broken. People had already started to walk away. Directors who once wanted him in their films were now choosing safer names. Projects that were written for him were quietly rewritten for someone else. His face started to disappear from ads, trailers, and promotions. It was like he was being erased, piece by piece, by the same machine that once lifted him so high. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most. How fast the love turned to silence. How quickly the world moves on when you're no longer the hero. But still, some people wondered, was this really the end of Jonathan Majors, or was there still more to come? Because history has shown us that in Hollywood, scandals don't always mean the final curtain. Some stars disappear for years, then suddenly return, trying to win back the world with a new face, a new voice, a new story. Could Jonathan do the same? Could he rebuild what had fallen apart, or had too much damage already been done? That's the mystery now, not just what happened, but what will happen. Is he quietly planning a comeback? Or is he slowly fading into a life where the cameras don't follow, where the roles stop coming, and where the silence becomes permanent? No one can say for sure. But one thing is clear, the story of Jonathan Majors is not just a fall from fame. It's a reminder of how fame works, how fast it lifts, how fast it drops, and how little it protects when the truth, or something close to it, finally breaks through. It's a reminder that behind every red carpet smile, there may be something darker hiding, that the people we admire the most may not be who we think they are. And in the case of Jonathan Majors, the story is still open, still filled with questions, still heavy with doubt. The world may move on, Hollywood may find new faces, but the shadow of this scandal will remain. It will follow him, whether he returns to the spotlight or disappears forever. It will live in the roles that were once his, in the silence of the fans who once cheered, and in the empty spaces where his future used to be. This is not just a story of success and failure. It is a story of image, silence, power, and truth. And how, sometimes, all of those things collide when we least expect it.